In this movie, I'll show you how you can use a hue saturation adjustment layer to draw forth color where seemingly none exists. All right, just so we can see this photograph in all of its drab glory, I'm going to go ahead and close the Properties panel by clicking on that little X. And then I'll go up to the Window menu and choose the Channels command so that we can examine the red, green, and blue channels inside the image. So starting with the red channel, so if I click on the red channel, I'm going to see a grayscale version of that channel. And then when I click on green, you can see that the surface of the water brightens up ever so slightly, and it grows brighter still when I click on the blue channel. But there's really not much difference between the three channels. Now, if there were no difference, we would end up with an entirely grayscale image. And that's because you need differences between the three channels in order to see color. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the Layers panel. And I'll create a hue saturation adjustment layer by first bringing up my adjustments panel, and then I'll Alt or Option click on that first icon in the second row in order to bring up the new layer dialog box. And I'll just go ahead and call this guy color with an exclamation point, and then I'll click OK. And that will bring up my free floating properties panel. So I'll go ahead and hide the adjustments panel. And then I'm just going to crank the saturation value up as high as it will go to plus 100. And you can see that that is too far. We end up with these ridiculously saturated colors. So now I'll just click in the saturation value, and then I'll press the down arrow key in order to reduce the value to the point at which the colors appear to settle down. And that happens at about 90 when we're this far zoomed out. But notice if I go ahead and zoom in by Control Spacebar clicking, that's a Command Spacebar click on the Mac, you can see that we have some pretty jagged transitions. This is what's known as color noise, by the way, and it's pretty awful right now. So I'll go ahead and click in the saturation value and press the down arrow key until it more or less goes away, which should happen, let's say, around 70%. And now I'll just go ahead and press Control-0 or Command-0 on the Mac in order to zoom out. And that's a little bit too tepid, I think. And so I'll just go ahead and click in that saturation value and press Shift-up arrow in order to increase the value to plus 80, which looks pretty good as long as we're zoomed out. All right, now I want to make some selective modifications. So I'll go ahead and select the Targeted Adjustment tool, which is available to me in the upper left corner of the Properties panel. And then I'll go ahead and drag inside this lower region of the surface of the water right there. And I'm going to drag to the right until I increase the saturation value to 50. And notice that I'm affecting just the cyans. So if I want to see what I did to the entire image, I have to switch back to Master, and that will show me that saturation value of plus 80 that I applied just a moment ago. And I now have on top of that a saturation value of plus 50 that's applied to the cyans and the cyans only. And now I'll go ahead and modify the hue of those cyans. I want to make them a little bluer by pressing the Control key or the Command key on the Mac and dragging until I get a hue value of plus 10, as we're seeing right there in the Properties panel. And that makes the surface of the water ever slightly more blue. All right, now I want to make the coral a little oranger. So I'll press the Control key or the Command key on the Mac, and I'll drag inside this little fish right there. See it? That little yellow fish? And I'll drag this time to the left until I get a hue value of -20 that's applied only to the yellows and nothing more. And now I'm going to grab that Properties panel and I'm going to put it away by dropping it just below the circular adjustment icon. And now, just so we can see what a difference we've made here, I'll turn off the color layer. This is how things looked at the beginning of the movie, and this is how things look now, thanks to the ability of a hue saturation adjustment layer to bring forth color seemingly out of nowhere.